Hi, all you wonderful people. As I always say, it's great having you with me for another monologue as we take a deliberately critical look at some of the plans that the powers that ought not to be have in store for us. But before we launch into today's monologue, I do have a bit of news, which is to say we now have a sponsor. We have our very first sponsor. They're called Gold Bullion Partners, and as far as I am concerned, they are a thoroughly good bunch. I know them personally, I've spoken to them at length about all sorts of things, and I find them fascinating and, more importantly, trustworthy. They're all about gold and silver, and one of the things they say is, and I'm quoting them here, Gold Bullion Partners, owning gold and silver is a way to look after your wealth. It's not about speculation, it's about preservation and keeping your money safe and in your control. So, what Gold Bullion Partners do is they help you and advise you through the process of buying gold and silver. The actual stuff, not certificates, the actual bits of metal. And in talking the process through with you, you find out together if it's something for you or not. If you want to find out more about them, there's a link to all of it in the notes below. Not only, but also, here's how you can help support this channel directly. All you need to do is go to my patreon.com site, my presence there, and become a member. It's a brilliant site, if I do say so myself. Exclusive weekly videos. More importantly, it's populated by a wonderful bunch of people, like-minded people. And the details are also in the notes below. If you're holding on to a rising balloon, then you face a dilemma, which is to say, should you let go and face the pain of landing, or are you, by at least your own estimate, already too high so that the only option is to keep hold of the rope and go higher and higher? I think about this all the time in relation to the world we're living in now. Not on my own behalf anymore, you understand, but for the sake of all those still dangling from the rope on the rising balloon. In this context, the rising balloon is what we have learned to call the official narrative. There's so many terms like that now that we've picked up along the way that I don't remember using 5 years ago. The official narrative. Well, the balloon of the official narrative is rising faster and faster all the time, higher and higher. Speaking personally, I let go of the balloon in the early weeks of the COVID debacle 5 years ago. I landed with an awful thump and I've been nursing my bruises ever since. I still am. I'm still hurt. The balloon was already and undeniably pretty damn high at that point. By now, though, I'm watching the balloon, the official narrative, as a steadily diminishing dot carried away on the breeze. But I take care to remind myself that I held on to the rope for more than 5 decades. That's the truth. And for that reason, I try always and only to sympathise, empathise with all those still helplessly floating away. I'm going to mix metaphors now. I didn't learn to swim until I was, I think, about 10 years old. Up until that point, I just stood in the swimming pool and looked on at swimmers with disbelief. How was that even possible, I thought? Who were those crazy people out there in the deep water, taking their lives in their hands? But then the day came, and I took my feet off the bottom of the pool in the shallow end, and all at once I was swimming. Not with any style, you understand, just a frantic doggy paddle, but I was swimming just the same. And I looked around at the other non-swimmers and instantly thought, what's wrong with you people? This is easy, you losers. And yet only moments before I had been one of them. Already, seconds into the new reality, I was indulging myself in being contemptuous of those still standing forlorn in the shallows with their armbands and rubber rings on. I was wrong then. And whenever I feel frustration now with those still not swimming, or those who are still holding onto the rope beneath the rising balloon, whenever I feel the rise, even the threat of the rise of that smug superiority, I try to remember to check myself. I was just like that until mere moments ago. I try not to forget. The truth is, it's terrifying to contemplate what seems like the impossible. To a greater or lesser degree, all of us are invested in and trusting of a version of reality we have assembled and acquired through every moment, every hour and day and week and year of our lives. It accretes around us like a shell, our understanding of what's going on. And if you're like me, you acquired most of that understanding and that trust while you were busy and preoccupied with much else besides. You didn't make conscious decisions. It just kind of grew around you. You took it for granted, if you're like me. Some people with specialties, specialisms, highly credentialed experts in science and in history and in medicine and the law and many more vaunted disciplines besides. People like that don't just make their livings from their acquired concept of the world. You know, they don't just pay the bills and the mortgage, but they also have their sense of themselves, of their place in the community, their status amongst their fellows, interwoven with what they know, or at least what they think they know. As one recently having let go of the balloon, one who has only recently learned to swim, I look around at the world of now and wonder just how much, frankly, I don't know. That's where I am. It's as simple as that. You know, rather than feeling filled with knowledge and newfound certainty, far less trust, I just doubt whether I know much of anything at all, beyond just knowing that I know very little, if anything at all, for sure. All I've really learned is to question and doubt. That's it. And all the time, the balloon keeps rising higher and higher. The official narrative is now just vast amounts of hot air, seems to me plain to see. You know, the inconvenient truth about the scamdemic, about the nature of the jabs, about fiat currency, about the creation and flow of money being in the hands not of the people, but in the hands of secretive, profit-hungry private businessmen, about the war in Ukraine, about what's happening in the so-called Holy Land and in countless trouble spots around the world, about US foreign policy since at least the end of World War II, about the climate, about the behaviours of the self-professed elites. And I mean their private as well as their public lives. The list is all but endless. In addition to the C word, that is COVID, now I look on with horror at the undeniable presence, if not the ubiquity, of a P word, which is paedophilia. So much of that, the very idea of that, the appalling mistreatment of children, is still all but unthinkable for me as well. That water feels too dark, too deep, too bone and soul chillingly cold to venture into it. I pay attention to all of that, and so inevitably I find myself questioning what I've been told, what I've been taught, what I had previously understood or trusted about everything else as well. I no longer accept, not at face value, the official narrative about the history of the world. I think it's fair to say too that the scientific method by which ideas, hypotheses about the world and the universe are supposed to be honestly and openly tested against observation and experiment to see if they match, that method has been corrupted or misused to the point where root and branch reform is urgently required at the very least, if not an honest and open decision to start over. Worst of all, to be honest, I've moved from a position where for most of my life I tended to trust the experts to a new version of the world in which I feel that if I haven't seen it or experienced it for myself, then I'm not prepared to accept at face value what anyone is saying about anything. And if that makes me sound like a conspiracy theorist or a tin hat wearing crank, an aluminium foil wearing crank, paranoid and deluded, then so be it. Feel free to call me all of the above and more. But just because you're paranoid doesn't, to coin a new phrase, mean you're not being lied to. If you wonder why I feel like this and so strongly about this, about the validity of my new position, then I say my new position and my defence of it boils down to the censorship and the silencing of dissent. If all that the authorities, the authors and mouthpieces of the official narrative have, if all they have is forcing and frightening dissenting voices into silence, then frankly, it's game over for them. They're already dead and they just don't know it. If all they can do is put their metaphorical hands over metaphorical mouths, then evidently those authorities have nothing. The official narrative is demonstrably collapsing all over. The great trees of that old growth forest are just toppling in the high wind of truth. The climate hoax, the push for perpetual war, the undeniable harms to health on the watch of the very institutions supposedly tasked with maintaining public health, the lunacy and anti-human nature of Agenda 2030, and if you don't know what Agenda 2030 is, just go and look it up. The blatant dishonesty of those who lead or who would lead, the hypocrisy of those who preach personal morality and lifestyles of monk-like asceticism for the masses while themselves living lives at a level of excess, if not downright debauchery, that would have made an Egyptian pharaoh or a Roman emperor blush with shame. All of that has grown too great to deny, far less to hide. Too many people have already let go of the rope. Countless numbers let go of the rope long before I did. And many, many more have let go of the rope since, regardless of the pain of landing. And the longer you hold on, the more painful it is. To mix the metaphor, too many people have learned to swim. Too many people look on at the so-called leaders, at the so-called public servants, at the self-appointed arbiters of right and wrong, of law and order, at the state-approved experts in this, that and the next thing, and see not people to be trusted, but in stark contrast, the very worst of people, the lowest of the low, the kakistocracy, the worst of us. We know they have the wealth, at least for now. We know they have the power, at least for now. But we know too, and which is much more important to know, that those people have earned neither. That they have the right to neither. It's damned hard and frightening to let go of the rope attached to the rising balloon. It takes more effort and self-reliance to swim in the deep end than to stand in the shallows. I'll be honest and say if it hadn't been for the global con of the scamdemic, I'd likely still be holding on to the rope as well. I'd still be in the shallow end with my rubber ring on. And if it hadn't been for the existence of the internet, which either by design or, much more likely, by unintentional, inadvertent accident born, as always, of hubris, then I wouldn't have been able to embark on a voyage of self-re-education. But that's what happened to me. What has in truth only really just begun to happen to me. I can tell you it's a long drop. Deep water is dark and usually cold. But if you haven't already done so, I dare you, let go of the rope. Strike out and kick for the other side.